With that, it's recording now, and it's my pleasure to introduce Jen Perry, who's the co-founder of Compost for Good, and also the Inca Organics Recycling Coordinator. So thanks for joining us, and we look forward to learning about compostables.
Beautiful. Thanks. And yeah, Kathy, since you're, we can make this as interactive as possible and more if discussion based. So, if there's a question that you have or even something off topic, feel free to just chime in, interrupt, whatever. This
Okay.
presentation was intended to be, is going to primarily be about compostables. And the main reason that I would like to have offered this presentation is because as a customer of a lot of local farms, I was noticing a lot of compostable packaging that I was ending up with. And I was just a little bit concerned. I want to make sure that there's some messaging and some possible greenwashing that's happening out there about so-called compostable products, where farmers might think that they're purchasing a product that's in line with their mission and their goals, but it might not be exactly what they think it is. So this presentation is just to kind of raise some awareness about what it means for a material or a product to be compostable. So Kathy, so this is specifically about that topic, but anything, if you wanted to talk more about composting too along the way, feel free to, I'm happy to talk with you about other things too.
Yeah, I'm kind of hoping to learn about what people buy as compost.
Yeah. As composted product, you mean, or as compostable products?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So just a brief overview of Compost for Good. We are a group of 3 people, although one of them is Katie. You see her over to the right, and she is raising a couple of babies, so she's kind of offline a little bit. And then her dad, his name is John Culpepper. You see him there with a microscope, and then myself. We started Compost for Good 3.5 years ago, and we started because we were getting, John specifically at North Country School Camp Treetops was getting a lot of inquiries and a lot of questions about community scale composting and all kinds of levels. Like, how do we do it? How do we optimize it? And so we formed Compost for Good to respond to community scale composting inquiries from all kinds of levels. So we are now affiliated with the Adirondack North Country Association in the Saranac Lake area. And the simplest way to talk about what we do is that we offer technical assistance for every possible aspect of community scale composting that you can think of. We try to be responsive. So if we are talking to a group of farmers, for example, and they say, hey, we want to learn more about animal mortality composting. So we actually partnered with Cornell Essex County a couple of years ago and hosted an animal mortality composting workshop because that's what we heard was a need. We also have a community compost liaison program in partnership with Clarkson University that trains a distributed network of compost liaisons that goes into various communities and helps educate the community about food waste reduction and composting opportunities. Those are just 2 of the tiniest little bits of what we do. So next slide, please. Oh, I'm the person. I've got the control. I forgot. Okay. So the reason, again, to reiterate why today this presentation on compostables is because I just want to have the opportunity to raise awareness about what compostable products, what do they actually consist of? What does it mean when you look for a product that is labeled compostable? How do you sort through all of the options so that we are purchasing, if you have kind of a mission in mind for why you're purchasing compostable products, this will help you navigate your decision-making processes. So this picture I just threw in there because I literally was at a business today, and I have another hat that I wear is that I own a food scrap hauling and composting business in the Plattsburgh area. And we just started collecting from this business in Plattsburgh, and they happen to have just purchased a bunch of compostable products, which the word to the right in the orange box is actually world centric. And we're going to talk about that in a few minutes, what that means and why that was exciting for me to see. So just keep this in the back of your head, but it was just an ironic and funny opportunity for me to be able to talk about some real life stuff. So some really high level definitions in compostable land. There'll be some slides that dig into this in the after this, some pictures and some graphics. But one of the biggest misconception is the difference between biodegradable versus compostable. And I'll talk about what that means.
Mm.
PFAs can you say the whole, Cole, the whole word for, I just say PFA, it's like perfluoro and parafluoro, and but either way, these are called the forever chemicals. So if you haven't heard of PFAs, then I will be completely shocked, but this is a really hot topic right now. They're finding their way into every aspect of humanity. They're through the entire food chain, and there's a pretty big effort to keep them out of the food chain, because once they get in there, it's really hard to get rid of them, and the potential health consequences are substantial. So we're going to talk about PFAs are finding their way also into compostable products. So how can we avoid those to the best that we possibly can? Another term that we're going to learn more about is the American Society for Testing and Materials, ASTM. That will be relevant later, standard versus certification. The Biodegradable Products Institute, BPI. We'll talk about that later. These are all, I just want to flash these in front of you now, and then we'll dig into them in later slides. The concept of certified compostable we'll talk about, and bioplastics or biomaterials, and then fiber. So these are some key definitions that we're going to dig into in a little bit. So back to the first definition, the difference between compostable and degradable or biodegradable. This right here is where I think the very earliest stages of how we start to parse out a compostable product versus something that's not a compostable product. And the thing that's important to realize is that pretty much everything is biodegradable at some point in time, under certain conditions and under certain time constraints. For something to be compostable, the components that are broken down have to match the environment within which they're placed. So if you put something that's not compostable, but it's biodegradable into a compost pile, you're matching that product up with a certain environment, and the decomposition process in that compost pile is going to potentially lead to microplastics. Depending on what's in the original material, the process A might not break down in time or over time, and B, when it does break down, the component parts are potentially toxic to yourself, the soil health, the microbes, things like that.
Hi.
I
Xavi.
heard a baby. Is
Xavi.
Zoom a
Home.
baby?
Merci.
Do we have a little child, a little baby in our audience? That's great. So that's the primary difference. So we do want to help navigate how you can make choices between something that's labeled compostable and something that's biodegradable. So and then plastic just doesn't even dissolve. It just, maybe it breaks down into tinier pieces, but it just atomizes and is still persistent in the environment. And again, in biodegradable and in plastic scenarios, we are left with microplastics in our environment. This is just another way of looking at it. From the polymer characteristics. So the polymers are going to be the more of the products that mimic plastics. So there's paper products, which tend to be fiber, but then there's a whole bunch of bioplastics that are allegedly designed to be either compostable or biodegradable. So this is just another way of talking about the fact that the original product then is designed to be subject to a certain environment, and how it breaks down in that environment under those specific conditions then is correlated with the end product. So are there any questions about the difference? There's lots of different ways to kind of come at this difference between compostable versus biodegradable. Is that mostly clear, somewhat clear, confusing for anybody? No need to perseverate if not. So when we talk about compostable products, there's all kinds of options that are out there. We do see a lot of them in the food industry, and there's a reason for that, and I can elaborate on that in a little bit. But these are all products that you probably have seen and used in your lifetime that are so-called compostable. So I just wanted to throw up so that we have an idea of what it is that we're talking about. I don't have any images of wooden silverware, wooden cutlery, but bamboo cutlery is a really common source of compostable. And again, that's in the fiber realm, whereas the plastic silverware, the plastic cups, the plastic lids, those are in the bioplastic domain. So there's lots of reasons why compostables is a good thing. Back to what I just was talking about with food service products. In general, if you try to recycle a pizza box and it's stained with grease, most recycling places are like, no, thank you. Or if you have a cup that's partially full of a food product, same thing. Like, you're not going to throw that in the recycling bin, but you could take a tray that's made out of certified compostable products and it's still got food waste on it, and you could put that into a compost pile. So the food service industry is one place where you see a lot of compostable products. Increased rates of food scrap recycling happens to for that same exact reason. So again, you might have a cup that's partially full of food. The restaurant I was with this morning, this was their situation. Whereas very few people are going to maybe take that cup, rinse it out, put the food waste in the compost bin, and then put the cup into the compost bin or the recycling bin. So there's a lot of places that are actually composting because they now are able to bring in composting for their products. Inconsistent recycling opportunities too. So this is where you might not have a lot of opportunities. Maybe your recycler doesn't take certain recycling products. So this gives you other options for giving a full life cycle. Shorter cradle to cradle life cycle. So cradle to cradle, meaning the start and the end of a product. So if it starts out as corn or as bamboo, it ends as soil, which then can become the same product again. So we want this cradle to cradle life cycle that goes with the products. Reduced waste volume is related to the things, and it one of the bigger reasons people are always looking for alternatives to single use plastics. So compostable plastic bags are a really great alternative to that. And again, if there's any questions ever along the way, just feel free to interrupt and chime in. Unfortunately, the list of challenges and concerns is a little bit bigger than the opportunity list, but there are a lot of different, first and foremost, there's a lot of philosophies behind compostable materials and a lot of pushback about even, there's some composters that won't even talk about compostable materials because they think we shouldn't even be going there. We should be looking at reduce and reuse first. That's not necessarily really going to happen. So there's a philosophical debate out there, but just to point out, reducing and reusing and looking for durable products is the first and biggest goal of all of this. A lot of composters won't accept compostable products at all. My business is back and forth. We really don't know why. We really don't know if we're going to continue with that, but we'll explain that in a few minutes. Lookalikes is a really big issue because what that means is you might have one compostable product that is actually certified compostable. And when I go out to my compost pile, I could have 55 cups in my pile, and 4 of them could look like the rest of them, but they're not compostable. So it's, for me as a composter, I don't know which ones to pull out. So I might end up with crappy compost and contaminated, which we don't want. One of the bigger things I would really like to have talked about with farmers is the end use education. So if you're buying a certified compostable plastic bag, for instance, that's a great goal. But if the end user of that plastic bag doesn't know what to do with it, then it's kind of hard to know what's really happening with it. And your original intention is kind of null and void if they're not doing what you want them to do with it. Greenwashing, we're going to talk about in a lot more detail. But one of the more important bits of information to realize is that something that's called compostable, it might look like a paper product, and sure, part of it might be compostable, but it also might have a coating to it. So if you have a cup that's called compostable, if it's shiny on the inside, that's probably got PFAs in it or other chemicals that you don't want to have in your food system. So that being aware of the fact that as this thing composts and breaks down, unless it's certified, which we're going to talk about, you're going to end up with contamination in your pile that you don't want, or you could end up with it. They're expensive. The business I was talking to this morning, that they're spending tenfold to buy compostable cutlery versus plastic. So durability. Sometimes if anybody has used a paper straw, it's not the same as a plastic straw. They get all mushy and they fold up on you. So another big issue is when a product doesn't fully decompose, because if it's not designed to decompose, again, under those conditions, which is the higher temperatures, then you end up with chunky stuff in your compost pile. And for a composter, that's no fun. It takes extra time to screen things out. We don't want to do that. PFAs, we just talked about the potential for contamination, that the forever chemicals that then just end up everywhere in our food system. A couple of other things: stacked compostable products. What happens in a compost pile is sometimes if you end up with 10 trays because they got thrown in the garbage that way, they don't break down for us either. So even though they could, they don't under those conditions. And the one big piece for farmers to realize is that if you're an organic farm and you want to get compost that is approved for organic application, certified organic farms are not allowed to source compost that incorporates compostable items. So that's a tidbit of information that there's some folks working on that to encourage there to be some exceptions to that, but as of right now, that's the case. So, hi Liam, I can see you now and your little helper. Welcome. Nice. It's a small group, so we're doing the recording for the farmers. It'll be posted, but as I shared with Kathy, feel free to weigh in and if you have any questions or clarifying points. Great. And normally my preferred presentation format is much more interactive. So, this is mostly for an online posting. So I apologize for the one-sidedness of it. But, so life cycle, cradle to cradle. Again, going back to this point of whatever, if you're a farmer and you're buying these compostable products with an intention behind it, assuming your intention is that you believe that you're buying something that's going to go to this cradle to cradle philosophy, that's great. And that's a 100% noble thing. But if the end user isn't completing that circle, then your original intended purpose kind of falls out the window. So it's not really my place to say how you close that loop, because you know your own unique needs and systems, and you know your customers and the way your systems work. But if that's an important thing to you, it's something that you should be thinking through. So it might be a label that goes on to the bag. It might be working as hard as you can to do a durable option instead of a single-use option. I appreciate that's sometimes just not possible. Labeling and signage. So maybe if you do end up with a certified compostable product, somewhere on the product you say end of life, reuse. If not reuse, find a compost pile to put it in so it can be returned to the earth. Product sourcing. In the next few slides, we're going to be talking about sourcing reliable and certified products so that you know for fact what you're getting. And there's a whole world out there that encourages and researches how to end up with a reliable product. So product sourcing, the customer I was with this morning, the relationship we have there is that we're working with them to find the products out of the gate that my business will accept and approves of. So there's a lot of back and forth, a lot of relationship, and a lot of education that goes with that. And again, always, how can you just avoid this disposable product in the first place? What are your durable options over single stream? So this is just a list of what compostable products tend to be made out of. And again, if you're just getting a bowl of soup and it was made out of wood pulp, that'd be great, but it would probably ooze out into your hand and melt all over the floor, and nobody wants that. So there's this balance and give and take between compostability and life cycle, but also durability. And you don't want to take a sip of hot coffee and have it like melt and leak down your face. So these are a lot of the products listed here are the typical ones that are used in compostable products. But again, where we get into trouble is toward the end of the list, where you start to bring in other materials that you don't want to have in your body and you don't want them to have into the food system through your compost, that then it just cycles through. So how do we navigate this whole world? So I'm just going to reiterate, it's complicated, it's nuanced, it's political. Again, you're trying to create a durable product that's durable enough, but at the end of its use, it makes a circle. So you're just having to balance those two things. And we're in a capitalist world where there's money and profit and investment, you know, all the way down from the people who are making these products to the restaurants and farmers who are using them. So it's a challenging thing, but there are a couple of organizations that make it a lot easier to navigate. I'm going to keep saying reduce, reuse first, whenever possible. And there's some creative options out there for that. But there's a world of third-party certification, and then there's a world of labeling, and those two things kind of go together. So the third-party certifications are, so the ASTM that we talked about in the definition slide, they have come up with a series of standards for compostability. So those standards, back to the point that we made, is that this product under these conditions, which the definition of the condition in composting is high temperature, high moisture, aeration, within a time frame, which is 3 to 6 to 8 months. Within that time frame, under those conditions, this product will become, without contamination, will biodegrade and become part of the compost system without contaminating it. So the ASTM defined through research a series of standards. They are not the certifying agency. They are the standard creator. So then from there, in the United States, the only entity that is certifying, third-party certifying, is BPI, the Biodegradable Products Institute that we talked about earlier. So, okay, great. So BPI, this isn't in the United States. BPI has this certifying thing, but how do you know? So it's the bottom graphic, biosolid right there. The BPI has a very specific label. And for us, because we're lazy right now, that's what we look for. Us meaning myself as a composting entity. If it's got that label, it's labeled BPI, and sometimes some products will actually reference ASTM standards. They'll actually say that right on the product. I'm like, okay, cool. I know for the most part that this product will not contaminate my compost. It will break down. I feel good about this. So that's the United States. The other nuance to this is that, to this point, BPI only certifies products that are going to be compostable in industrial or commercial settings. They are not certified for household use. And the reason for that is, again, back to this point that you have to match the material with the conditions for decomposition. Most backyard composters do not achieve the same temperature standards as an industrial composter. And by industrial, I mean commercial scale, like larger than backyard. So that's a really important point to note, because you might see that. You might see certified for commercial, certified for industrial in this country. Other countries do certify to the household level, but in the United States, that's what we have right now. So that's BPI, there's the label, boom, I'm done. I feel really good about that. So just to point out, there's a philosophical debate ongoing about labeling. It's kind of back to if folks are around for the USDA certified organic worlds that happened. Now all of a sudden, this thing is expensive and I have to spend more money. I'm a small business. I'm trying to do the right thing. I'm paying for this label. So it creates a whole world of potential barriers. So it is not necessarily like, woohoo, high five, we're done. But it's a step, and it certainly can make things a lot easier. So labeling there's actual legal ramifications to this. So if you label something as certified compostable, you can set yourself up for some legal issues. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. We talked about all the other things too. Commercial versus home, expensive, challenges. So just to point out a couple of other opportunities, World Centric is a manufacturer of compostable materials. And back to that slide that I showed you from my customer this morning, World Centric is highly trusted. And I would buy from World Centric something that was manufactured by World Centric and feel comfortable about it. Eco Products is another one. They're a distributor, not a manufacturer, but a distributor. And then the composting manufacturer, the compost, actually I said it's not composting, it's Compost Manufacturing Alliance. So this is a group of compost manufacturers or people who make compost. And this group is pro compostable products, but they support a network of field testing. So they, by that, they mean I'm a compost operator or compost manufacturer. I'm incorporating compostable products into my compost system. I'm going to field test that, and I'm going to feed that information back into this alliance, back into this network. I'm going to test it for PFAs. I'm going to test it for a breakdown, and that just creates this massive database and this massive network of resources, and which is field testing, which is the next bullet. Consumer education we talked about. If you end up with a compostable product, I don't know, what the hell do I do with it? Do I throw it into my home compost pile? Again, it's not really an easy solution at this point, but if you have access to a commercial scale composter and they accept compostables, it's a great place for them to go. If you are a composter yourself, I'd say the best thing to do is to reach out to us, but I can't say this enough. We do this all the time. Work with your customers. Every customer that we have, because we end up with contamination all the time. We end up with their plastic cups and straws and all those types of things. So if they're ending up in our piles anyway, we work with them to say, okay, maybe you could switch to a compostable product that we could just overlook and it ends up in our pile. Some just high level things to avoid. Shiny coatings, you're probably looking at something not good, something petroleum product, PFA based. If there's no third-party certification, and again, in this country, BPI is the only one I would look for. And as a general rule of thumb, bioplastics, something that's labeled a bioplastic, tends to be it's more likely to be contaminated. The fiber-based products tend to be a lot more straightforward. So this is just an overview how, we were just talking about, to orient you, there's on the left, there's different industrial compost, home compost, et cetera, all the way down to different. So again, back to this point, it has to match the environment. So those are the different environments: industrial composting, home composting. So the test standards to those applications, you can see, so we go down test standards, if there's an X, there's nothing. And matching soil biodegradation, landfill, blah, blah, blah. And then the next column is the equivalent standard for international. And then you see the certifying body over to the right. Austria, we see this one a lot, but BPI, you can see where BPI comes into play. So only for industrial applications in this country. So greenwashing. So the closing few slides, I just wanted to, if you haven't gotten that message now, I give up. I want to just show a few slides of exactly what to look for. And there are, back to this lookalike point, greenwashing exists on so many different levels, but one of the sneakier ways is to create a logo and a branding strategy that mimics something that you would or could trust in another situation. This is thumbs up, right? This one's good. BPI compostable, and then we see the description: commercially compostable only. Facilities may not exist in your area. So that's kind of their qualifier. And then we see in the middle, I think that's England, and then we see the Austria, and you can see where it says home. So it's okay. So in Austria, it is certified to the home level, but not in this country. So here's an example, just a few examples of what to look for that are not. So they can say compostable, and they can throw in the little recycling thing, and there's a guy with like the little bin. It's like, I'm not a plastic, I don't pollute the environment. Woohoo, great. Not trustworthy. Not to say that it isn't accurate. That's not the point. The point is that it's not a guarantee that it's accurate. So, take your chances. So here's another way to look at this. So you can compare, you see the color schemes are similar. You got the circle, you got the leaf, you got the right wording, 100% biodegradable, biodegradable product. Woohoo, I'm great. I'm doing the right thing. But again, I saw one picture of a box and it was like biodegradable, eco-friendly packaging. They wrote letters on a box. It's like, okay, sure. So just to orient that they're how to look for those differences. So hopefully, we'll be having the slide deck available if people want to be using some, these are some hyperlinks. Compost for Good is always available. We are here for all across the board, any sort of community scale composting questions you have, whether it's from the education side to the technical side, to the operational side. Relative to this, here are some links of places that we talked about, Biodegradable Products Institute, BPI. Controls intended to remove contamination, CERC, I wanted to show that there too. They work closely with compost operators, and this is an ongoing collaborative to support the reduction of contamination in general. Contamination finds its way into compost piles in all kinds of ways. Compostables is just one of them. They're a great collaborative. The USCC, the United States Composting Council, they can be expensive if you're going to be a member, but their resources are phenomenal. And you can Google around USCC for resources. Biocycle magazine, if you haven't heard of it, this is a free online magazine. It's very technical, not very technical, like prohibitively technical. It's like the real deal. It's not fluffy. There's a lot of really helpful information, very scientific, through Biocycle magazine. Eco Products distributor, we trust them exclusively. World Centric, we trust them. And the Compost Manufacturers Association, which we also talked about. So this is just a few places, if this is a topic of interest to you, to dig in and learn. So that's the 101, super high level. But again, if I could just summarize it back to this point, just if your goal, be mindful of what your goal for purchasing compostables is in the beginning. Match your goal up then with your decisions. If you are really trying to avoid, you really want this product to be composted, not that you think it's going to break down in a landfill, because then it's no different than adding food scraps to the landfill. But if you truly want this product to end up in a compost pile, then there's a lot of thoughtfulness and mindfulness that need to go into the front end of those decisions and following it through so that we are making circles, which is really what we want to be doing in the food system. So thanks for listening. So Liam, we didn't really get a chance to meet you. Are you comfortable introducing yourself and just maybe sharing where you're from? Kathy was from Lewis. She's a master gardener.
Thank you so much for that super informative presentation, by the way.
Thanks. Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Jennifer. The only thing I buy for my egg selling are pulp egg cartons,
Yep.
and I never even looked to see. I always assumed they were completely compostable, but I know paper isn't always clean. And there's nothing on the packaging. They're just plain egg cartons, no printing on them. But I should go to the company to find out if they're all compostable, right?
Yeah, and find out, if they're willing to share what's in them, especially with egg cartons, of course, the reuse is as much as possible.
Right.
They're
And they
nice.
get to a point where they're not, and I throw them in my compost.
Yeah,
But I know the paper process itself isn't like really clean.
that's
So
right.
I never
That's
really
right.
thought about it much, but now I will.
Yeah, same. I hadn't either, and yeah, yep. Yeah, well, if you
Yeah,
do
I didn't.
whatever research you do, let us know. I would be happy if you wanted to email me. If you learned something, that would be really helpful.
Oh, okay.
Because the same thing for us. We get stacks of them, and I'm like, do we put them in the compost pile or what? Yeah. So.
Right. I didn't go with styrofoam. I went with paper thinking I was,
Right.
at least it's compostable when they break down. So,
Yeah.
because they don't last forever either.
No, they
None of
don't.
them do.
Yeah. 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 No, yep. Liam, can I ask where you're chiming in from? Do you mind sharing?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'm actually at the moment in Portugal, so that's why my son's
Oh,
sleeping because it's nighttime. But I farm and I grow mushrooms and organic produce in northern Lewis County.
oh, excellent.
So
Okay.
do a lot of composting, and we tend to err on the side of not putting, not, well, and recycling and throwing away a lot of stuff and instead of putting it in the compost just out of a bunch of caution. So this was
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah.
And yeah, I don't know, just we've been struggling to really nail uh, 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 compost, getting our compost up to temperature and holding it and doing everything right. I mean, in I mean, so always trying to learn a little bit, I guess.
Yeah. Do you mind sharing the name of your farm?
Uh, Cogumelo mushrooms.
Okay.
Yeah, I've only, yeah, not very big, pretty small operation, but produce a lot of compost. Obviously, the mushroom production yields a lot of pretty good substrate to, yeah, a lot of, well, I mean, a pretty good mix actually of carbon and nitrogen
Yeah.
in the end. Yes.
Yeah. Well,
And then mixed in with a whole bunch of trichoderma and
yeah, that's awesome. And we do of all of the groups that we support, farmers are our favorite. And we do have a grant coming up as soon as we get our contract signed, which should be soon, to support a cohort of farmers in the Champlain Valley-ish area. So would love to include you in that if you're interested. You know, if you're saying you're struggling to get up to temperature, that's certainly something we could talk to you about and we start with a site visit and then follow up support after that, and basically whatever you need.
yeah, no,
Sometimes it's one visit,
we-
sometimes it's years of visits, if you're open to that.
yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, yeah, always open. Every year we have ambitions of trying to figure it out a little bit better, and I think we get a little bit better every year. But you know, with all the other stuff going on, it's hard always to give the attention that it needs to the
Yeah,
compost. And a lot of times the piles just end up sitting there, and eventually, you know, it does break down. And
yeah. Yep. Time and temperature is the thing, but yeah, it's when you start getting those higher temperatures, then more
well, and in
magic.
particular, because I mean, trying to, you know, professional, you know, be a little more professional about the way we go about. I mean, I'm hoping to do a GAP certification, and you know, so then obviously the compost record keeping and stuff have
Yep.
been on my mind, but not something that I nailed down last year. So I'm hoping to have a better go at it this coming year.
Hey. Yay. Well, yeah, I'll if you're okay with it, I'll reach out with you and share our intake form and can once you get back from Portugal. That's pretty cool. That's really cool. So
Yeah, I'd love it. Thanks. Yeah.
yeah,
Awesome.
awesome.
I actually had a quick question about one tidbit from the presentation. So from the perspective of organic farmers who are, you know, either pursuing certification or renewing certification, I was curious if you had any insight about how tightly the use of compostables is regulated as part of the organic certification process, or if you think some of that is slipping through because it's maybe a little bit newer, or I don't know. I was just curious if you had any insight into what that part of the process looked like.
I can say that I don't specifically. I just know the farmers that we work with that are interested, that are certified organic, avoid bought in compost like the plague
Mm-hmm.
because of it. That's a great question though. In terms, it's more about the regulatory side of it. Is that what you mean? Like how carefully is that being policed?
Yeah, I guess you know, it's a sort of a two-part interest. I guess on one level, how tightly is it being policed, but then two, I guess, are you know, I was curious if your perception in the farming and composting community is that people are extremely cautious about the integrity of their product, or if maybe there aren't as many folks that share that level of concern, and there is yeah, just a little bit of a greater risk of PFAS in the food supply. Um,
I can say without hesitation that the community scale composters care deeply. I'm a member of a coalition, a national coalition of community composters, and the quality of the product that we generate is of the highest importance to almost all of us. Nobody does this to make money. It's not a way to get rich. It's we all believe, we almost, you know, almost categorically, we believe in what we're doing. So why would we wouldn't cut corners. When you get into the commercial scale, more of a corporate model, sometimes municipal models where the operators aren't necessarily the owners. It wasn't their baby that they came up with, they're an employee. One of the bigger ways that contamination finds its way into the streams are from, it's something called depackaging. So where, like, let's say it's Walmart and they have 14 bins of food scraps in their backyard, but they're all, their sandwiches are still wrapped in cellophane, they're still in packaging. So there is very expensive equipment that the larger scale composters, it's called depackaging. So they'll run their food systems through the depackagers, but it's still, all it is doing is breaking, it removes some of it, but a lot of that plastic ends up baked into the material. So I believe you have a higher risk of a lower quality in terms of a contamination rate if you're going with a corporate compost facility or a municipal compost facility. For those reasons. And definitely, there's one guy we met, they throw everything. The entire municipal solid waste stream goes into a gigantic drum and they compost the whole batteries, everything. And I don't know what world they think that's a good idea. Our John Culpepper tested the out product of that, and he's like, I have never seen anything like this in my life. So I wouldn't go with that. So I think the best part is to start as local as you possibly can. Reba Rock, they make their own compost. They know what goes in it. They know what comes out of it. And that's the place where you start. Make your own compost first. And then if you're bringing compost in, just like organic, get to know your farmer, get to know your composter. Talk with them, ask that what they, you know, do you include compostables? Other corporate composters might actually, they make compost out of biosolids from wastewater treatment facilities, which 100% have PFAs in them. So I would ask that question. Are you mixing in biosolids, biosolid compost in with your food scrap compost? That's a really important question. Period. Those biosolid, it's great. It's like, what else are we going to do with our dried poop but compost it? That's a great idea, but you need to know if that's what you're getting, it's not the same. So is that kind of answered a little bit? Like the policing part though, that's a great question. I just know the farmers that we talk to are super, super, super careful because they really do care. So it's not a policing issue. It's like a self-policing issue.
Yep, good to know. It's a great info to have out there.
Yeah. Trust your farmer. Great questions. Any other questions from y'all? Cool. Well, for folks listening remotely,
You said that this will be recorded. I missed it.
Go for it. Yeah.
No, just saying I missed the beginning. So you said and it looked interesting. So there'll be a recording available.
Yep. And we'll send so we'll send, well, Liam, are you guys connected? Like Liz and Cole, are you connected to Liam? Like do we all have email addresses? Because we didn't register, there's no registration, but we have a way to collect email addresses to make sure that folks that here have, right, more than just, because you're going to post it and we'll post it, but we want to make sure that you guys get it too by email.
Yeah, do you mind just dropping your email in the chat and we can send you follow-up info?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And that'll be helpful for us too as well. So
I did want to make a quick pitch before we log off and this will be for a lot of folks who are checking in for a recording just for our local soil and water conservation district. In Clinton and Essex County, we do have a shared plastic baler. So I thought it'd be a good thing to bring up while we're on the topic of agricultural waste because we don't have a lot of great recycling options around here for some of those agricultural plastics, but we do have some other sort of creative solutions. So there's a $300 deposit that's required for the plastic baler, but then the actual daily rate is only $20. And what it does is it takes all this kind of loose scraps and loose plastic and sort of wraps it up into something a little bit more solid and contained. So it's not really at risk of breaking down. And becoming a soil contaminant or a water contaminant. But without a recycling option, I think a lot of folks are keen to figure out something to do with it. So a couple of the ideas that we were mulling over were using them as windbreaks on the farm. So if you have an area that needs to be shored up for kind of crop protection or something like that, windbreaks are a great option. Similarly, for barns that are kind of poorly insulated or the foundation might be a little bit exposed, lining the foundation of a barn or some kind of structure that you want to protect a little bit more with the elements. It's great use of that as long as it's, not near, like a soil or water potential point of contamination. That's also a great option. And then one of the other ideas that I found when I was doing a little bit of research is I've seen a couple people using them as kind of temporary shade structures or static shade structures for animals, so that they maybe next to a fence line or something like that, they have a place to kind of come out of the wind or rain or snow, and for a little bit of temporary relief. But anyway, we have more information about that on our website, and I can also direct people to the Soil and Water Conservation District. So feel free to reach out if you have any questions. But yeah, thanks again, Jen. That was a great presentation.
Yeah, thank you. I love that. And one of the questions too that we were gonna we would like to ask too is if there are other waste reduction issues that you have, like the plastic, that's a great one, and I know that's a big concern. And there's a solution. So if there's other unmet waste needs out there that you'd like to share that we could possibly be working on strategies for, we'd love to hear it. So yeah.
Thanks a lot, Jen.
Yeah.
Really,
Thank you,
really
Jennifer.
important information. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Great.
Thank you very much.
Look forward to meeting. Bye-bye.
Yeah.